The rain fell lightly on the small neighborhood, its rhythmic patter adding to the quiet hum of an otherwise ordinary day. In a modest house on Maple Street, Jamal Carter sat on the edge of his bed, staring at a calendar pinned to the wall. A bright red circle marked today's date, his 12th birthday. But despite the significance of the day, Jamal didn't feel the usual excitement that came with it. His birthdays had always been simple affairs: a homemade cake, a few family members gathered around, and perhaps a small present or two. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make him feel special. This year, however, felt different, but he couldn't quite explain why. Downstairs, the sound of laughter and the clatter of dishes drifted up to his room. His mother, Anita, was busy in the kitchen, her warm voice filling the air as she hummed a familiar tune. Jamal's little sister, Mia, was likely helping, or making a mess. Either way, the atmosphere felt normal, comforting even. But Jamal couldn't shake the strange feeling that had been following him all day, a tingling in the back of his mind that made his heart race for no apparent reason. "Jamal," his mother called from the bottom of the stairs. "Come down here, birthday boy. We've got something for you." Jamal smiled despite himself, pushing the uneasy feeling aside as he hopped off the bed. He hurried down the stairs, two at a time, and found his family waiting for him in the living room. The small coffee table was covered with plates of snacks, a pitcher of lemonade, and a chocolate cake with his name carefully written in icing. Mia, who was only 6 but always full of energy, grinned up at him, her face smudged with frosting. "Happy birthday, big bro," she squealed, holding out a handmade card decorated with crayon hearts and stars. "Thanks, Mia," Jamal said, ruffling her curly hair before taking the card. He opened it to find a drawing of their family, stick figures with bright smiles standing under a rainbow. It wasn't perfect, but it made his chest swell with warmth. "All right, time for presents," Anita said, clapping her hands. She handed Jamal a neatly wrapped box. "This one's from me and your dad." Jamal's father, Marcus, was sitting on the couch, his tall frame almost dwarfing the small space. He nodded at Jamal with a proud smile. "Go ahead, son. Open it." Jamal tore through the wrapping paper to reveal a brand new pair of sneakers, the kind he had been eyeing in the store for weeks, but never thought he'd actually get. "Whoa, these are awesome. Thanks, Mom." "Thanks, Dad." Anita smiled, leaning down to kiss his cheek. "Would Dad you like them, baby?" Just as Jamal was admiring his new shoes, there was a knock at the door. The family exchanged curious glances. They weren't expecting anyone else. Marcus got up to answer it, his brow furrowed slightly. Jamal craned his neck to see who it was, but when Marcus opened the door, no one was there. Instead, a small package sat on the porch, wrapped in plain brown paper with Jamal's name scrawled across the top in unfamiliar handwriting. "Who's it from?" Anita asked as Marcus brought the package inside. "No idea," Marcus replied, inspecting it carefully. "There's no return address." Jamal's curiosity was piqued as he took the package from his father. It was light but solid, and something about it made his heart race again, that same strange feeling from earlier returning with a vengeance. "Can I open it?" His parents hesitated but eventually nodded. "Go ahead," Anita said, her voice tinged with caution. "But be careful." Jamal slowly unwrapped the package, the room growing eerily quiet as his family watched. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved with patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer under the light. There was no lock or hinge, just a seamless surface that felt warm to the touch. "What is it?" Mia asked, her wide eyes fixed on the box. "I don't know," Jamal murmured, his fingers tracing the carvings. As soon as he touched the center, the box clicked softly and began to open on its own. A soft golden light spilled out, bathing the room in a warm glow. Inside the box was a sleek, black bracelet, its surface smooth and unmarked, except for a faint, glowing symbol that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Wow," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Jamal, don't touch it," Anita said quickly, her tone sharp with worry. but it was too late. Drawn by an irresistible pull, Jamal reached into the box and picked up the bracelet. The moment it touched his skin, the light grew brighter, filling the entire room before disappearing in an instant. Jamal stumbled back, his breath coming in short gasps. The bracelet was now wrapped snugly around his wrist, and no matter how hard he pulled, it wouldn't come off. What's happening?" he stammered, his voice shaking. Before anyone could respond, a low hum filled the air, followed by a flash of images in Jamal's mind. Cities crumbling, storms raging, and a mysterious figure standing in the midst of it all, their face hidden by shadows. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the vision ended, leaving Jamal breathless and trembling. "Jamal," Anita cried, rushing to his side. "Are you okay? What happened?" I don't know," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think this bracelet is alive." The family stared at him, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Marcus knelt in front of him, his large hands steadying Jamal's shoulders. "Son, we need to figure out where this thing came from and what it means. But first, tell us exactly what you saw." Jamal took a deep breath, trying to make sense of the vision. "I saw destruction, cities falling, people running, and there was someone in the middle of it all. I couldn't see their face, but it felt like they were waiting for me." The words hung in the air, heavy with a sense of foreboding. Anita exchanged a worried glance with Marcus, her hand clutching her chest. "This isn't normal," she said. "We need to get help." But before they could decide what to do, the bracelet began to glow again, and Jamal felt a surge of energy coursing through his body. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, as if he had suddenly been plugged into a limitless source of power. His vision sharpened, his hearing became more acute, and his muscles felt stronger than ever before. "Mom, Dad, something's happening to me," he said, his voice trembling. Marcus stood, his face set with determination. "Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this, Jamal." But deep down, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever, and that the mystery gift on his birthday was only the beginning of something much larger. The living room was quiet, the kind of silence that presses down and fills every corner. Jamal sat on the couch, staring at the bracelet on his wrist. The symbol glowed faintly, pulsating in rhythm with his heartbeat. His mind raced with questions. Who sent this? Why me? And what does it mean? His family sat around him, their faces a mixture of concern and confusion. Even Mia, who usually couldn't sit still for more than a minute, was silent, her wide eyes fixed on her brother. "I don't understand," Anita said finally, breaking the silence. "How does a bracelet just attach itself like that? It's not natural." "It's not just that," Marcus said, his deep voice steady but laced with unease. "Jamal, when you touched it, you said you saw something. Destruction? A figure? Can you describe it more?" Jamal hesitated, his hands tightening around the bracelet. "It wasn't like I was seeing it with my eyes," he explained, his voice shaky. "It was like it was in my head, images, feelings. The destruction felt real, like I could feel the fear and the chaos. And the figure in the middle, it was like they were waiting for me. I don't know why, but it felt personal." Mia hugged her knees to her chest, her small voice breaking through the tension. "Do you think it's like a superhero thing, Jamal? Like in the comics? Maybe you have powers now." Anita shot her a look. "Mia, this isn't a game. We don't know what this is or what it's doing to your brother." Jamal glanced at Mia, forcing a small smile. "I don't know if it's like that," he said softly, "but something's definitely different." Marcus stood, pacing the room. His movements were slow and deliberate, the way they always were when he was deep in thought. "We need answers," he said finally. "This didn't just happen out of nowhere. Someone sent that box, and they knew exactly what they were doing." "But who?" Anita asked. "And why our son?" Jamal looked down at the bracelet again, his fingers tracing the glowing symbol. Maybe it's not about me. Maybe it's about what I'm supposed to do. The room fell silent again as his words hung in the air. Marcus exchanged a glance with Anita, who sighed and sat down beside Jamal, wrapping an arm around him. "No matter what this is," she said, her voice firm, "we're in this together. We'll figure it out, okay?" Jamal nodded, though the uneasy feeling in his chest didn't fade. He knew his family was trying to stay strong for him, but deep down, he could see the worry in their eyes. And he couldn't blame them, he was just as scared as they were. That night, Jamal lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The bracelet's faint glow lit up the room just enough to cast strange shadows on the walls. He turned his wrist, watching the symbol pulse softly. It was mesmerizing, almost calming, until a sudden jolt of energy shot through his body. Jamal sat up with a gasp, his heart racing. The room seemed to shimmer around him, like the air itself was alive. And then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went still. Jamal looked down at the bracelet, now glowing brighter than ever. A voice, soft and distant, yet unmistakably real, whispered in his mind. "Awaken." He froze, his breath catching in his throat. "Who's there?" he whispered, his voice trembling. But there was no response. The glow of the bracelet dimmed, and the room returned to normal. Jamal sat in the dark, his mind racing. What does that mean? Awaken to what? He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, Jamal was quiet at breakfast, picking at his plate of eggs and toast. Anita noticed immediately, her motherly instincts kicking in. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked gently. Jamal shook his head, not trusting himself to speak. Marcus lowered his coffee mug, his brow furrowed. "Did something happen?" he asked. Jamal hesitated before nodding. I think the bracelet tried to talk to me." Anita's eyes widened. "Talk to you? What do you mean?" "I don't know," Jamal admitted. "It was just one word. Awaken. But it felt like it was in my head, not like hearing someone out loud." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "This is getting stranger by the minute," he muttered. "We need to do something. Research, talk to someone, anything." Anita nodded. "Maybe we can start with the box. The carvings looked unique. There might be clues there." After breakfast, Marcus and Anita took the box to the dining table, examining every inch of it. The carvings were intricate, flowing in patterns that seemed almost alive. Marcus snapped a few photos and started searching online for anything that matched the design. Meanwhile, Jamal sat in the living room, staring at the bracelet and trying to make sense of it all. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, though Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching him. By the time evening rolled around, Marcus had found a lead. "There's a historian in the city who specializes in ancient artifacts," he announced. "Dr. Evelyn Monroe. I found a few articles about her work, and she might be able to tell us something." "You think she'll believe us?" Anita asked skeptically. Marcus shrugged. "It's worth a shot. We don't have many other options." That night, Jamal dreamed of the figure from his vision. They stood in the midst of chaos, their silhouette sharp against the swirling destruction. This time, though, the figure turned toward him, their voice echoing in his mind. "Your time is coming, Jamal. Be ready." He woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The bracelet glowed faintly in the darkness, a silent reminder of the mystery that had taken over his life. He didn't know who the figure was or what they wanted, but one thing was clear: he was running out of time to find out. The next morning, the family piled into the car and drove across the city to meet Dr. Evelyn Monroe. Jamal sat in the back seat, clutching the wooden box tightly. The bracelet, still snug on his wrist, pulsed faintly as if aware of what was happening. He couldn't shake the feeling that the bracelet was more than an object. It was alive in some way, connected to him in ways he didn't yet understand. Dr. Monroe's office was tucked into an old building downtown, the kind of place that seemed to hum with history. Shelves lined the walls, packed with ancient books, artifacts, and maps that looked older than time itself. The air smelled faintly of dust and leather, a reminder of the knowledge stored within the room. Dr. Monroe greeted them warmly, her sharp eyes and welcoming smile putting them at ease. "So, you've brought me something unusual," she said, motioning for them to sit. "Let's take a look." Jamal handed her the box, his fingers reluctant to let go. As soon as she took it, her brows knitted in concentration. She ran her fingers over the carvings, her expression shifting between fascination and unease. "This is remarkable," she murmured. "These symbols, they're not random. They're ancient, predating any civilization I've studied, but they're also specific, like they're meant to convey a message." "A message?" Marcus asked, leaning forward. "What kind of message?" Dr. Monroe tilted her head, studying the box from every angle. "It's hard to say without more context, but this kind of craftsmanship suggests significance. Whoever created this wanted it to last, to endure." Anita pointed to the bracelet on Jamal's wrist. "It was inside the box, and it attached itself to my son. We can't remove it." Dr. Monroe's eyes widened as she turned her attention to the bracelet. "May I see?" Jamal hesitated, but extended his arm. The bracelet's glow intensified slightly, as if responding to her presence. She didn't touch it, instead observing it closely. "This isn't just a bracelet," she said softly. "It's a conduit." "A conduit for what?" Jamal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For power," Dr. Monroe replied, her tone tinged with caution. "And from what I can tell, it's tied directly to you. I don't know why, but this was meant for you." The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over them. Jamal shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing. "What am I supposed to do with it?" he asked finally. "That depends," Dr. Monroe said. "Have you experienced anything unusual since you put it on? Visions? Changes in your physical abilities?" Jamal nodded slowly. "I've had visions, destruction, a figure in the middle of it all, and I feel stronger faster. It's like my senses are sharper." Dr. Monroe leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "It sounds like the bracelet is awakening something in you. If it truly is a conduit, then it's channeling energy, possibly unlocking latent abilities. But for what purpose, I can't say." "Is it dangerous?" Anita asked, her protective instincts kicking in. "It could be," Dr. Monroe admitted. "Anything with this level of power always comes with risks. But it could also be a tool, a gift. The key is figuring out how to control it." As they left Dr. Monroe's office, Jamal's mind was spinning. A conduit for power? A gift? None of it made sense, but it also felt strangely right, like a piece of himself he didn't know was missing had finally fallen into place. He glanced at his parents, who walked ahead, their voices low as they discussed what to do next. Mia skipped alongside them, oblivious to the tension in the air. Jamal stayed quiet, his thoughts swirling. That night, Jamal sat in his room, staring at the bracelet. The glow was steady now, almost soothing, but he couldn't ignore the energy humming beneath the surface. He thought about Dr. Monroe's words, about the power the bracelet seemed to hold. He had felt it, when the visions came, when his body surged with strength, but he didn't know how to control it. "Awaken," the voice had said in his dream. But awaken to what? And why him? His thoughts were interrupted by a faint noise outside his window. He froze, his heart pounding. Slowly, he crept to the window and peeked through the curtains. At first, he didn't see anything, but then a shadow shifted in the yard below. Someone was out there watching. Jamal's first instinct was to call for his parents, but something stopped him. He felt a pull, an urge to confront whoever it was. Quietly, he slipped on his sneakers and opened the window, climbing down the trellis to the ground below. The bracelet's glow intensified as he approached the edge of the yard where the shadowy figure stood. "Who are you?" Jamal demanded, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. The figure stepped forward, their face obscured by a hood. "You've been chosen," they said, their voice low and even. "The bracelet recognizes you, but you're not ready." "Chosen for what?" Jamal asked, his fists clenching. "And why are you here?" "To warn you," the figure said. "The power you hold is coveted. There are those who would do anything to take it from you. You must learn to harness it before they find you." "Who's they?" Jamal pressed, his heart racing. The figure didn't answer. Instead, they reached out, the hand glowing with the same energy as the bracelet. Jamal staggered back, but the figure didn't move to attack. Instead, they placed their glowing hand over their heart, as if in a gesture of respect. "Trust the bracelet," they said. "It will guide you." Before Jamal could respond, the figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone in the yard. He stood there for a long moment, his mind reeling. Whoever that was, they knew about the bracelet, and about him. And if what they said was true, Jamal's journey was just beginning. The danger was closer than he had imagined, and he had no choice but to face it. Jamal climbed back into his room, his hands trembling as he shut the window behind him. His heart was still pounding, the stranger's words echoing in his head. "The power you hold is coveted. You must learn to harness it before they find you." Who were they? And how could he learn to control something he barely understood? He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the bracelet as it pulsed faintly, almost as if it was alive. It felt like the glow was trying to reassure him, but the fear gnawing at the edges of his mind refused to subside. The next morning, Jamal decided to tell his parents about the encounter. Over breakfast, he recounted the details, leaving nothing out. His mother's face paled as he spoke, while his father's expression hardened with resolve. "You should have woken us up," Anita said, her voice sharp with worry. "What if they'd tried to hurt you?" "I didn't feel like they wanted to hurt me," Jamal said. "It was more like they were warning me. They knew about the bracelet, and they said I needed to learn how to use it." Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "This changes things," he said. "If someone knows about the bracelet, then they could be watching us. We can't take this lightly." "What do we do?" Anita asked, her voice trembling. "We find out more," Marcus said firmly. "Dr. Monroe might know something about these people. She might even know how to help Jamal learn to control this power." By mid-morning, the family was on their way back to Dr. Monroe's office. Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. Every car that lingered too long behind them, every shadow that shifted along the street, made his skin crawl. He kept his head down, trying to focus on the rhythmic pulse of the bracelet. The faint warmth it gave off felt almost protective, like it was trying to shield him from the growing unease. When they arrived, Dr. Monroe greeted them with her usual calm demeanor, though her curiosity piqued when Jamal recounted the encounter with the stranger. She listened intently, her sharp eyes narrowing as he described the glowing hand and the warning. "This confirms what I suspected," she said, her tone grave. "The bracelet is part of something much larger, something ancient. It wasn't just created to bestow power. It's a key, connected to forces that have been dormant for centuries. Whoever approached you likely knows this, and if they're warning you, it means others are already searching for it." "What do they want with it?" Marcus asked, his voice steady but tense. Dr. Monroe hesitated. "Power like this can be used for great good, but it can also be corrupted. If it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic." Jamal's chest tightened. "But why me? Why was I chosen?" "The bracelet didn't choose randomly," Dr. Monroe said. "It recognizes something in you, something unique. You were meant to wield this power, but that also makes you a target." Anita's hand flew to her chest, her fear evident. "So what do we do? How do we keep him safe?" Dr. Monroe stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down an ancient book with a cracked leather cover. She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for, a drawing of a bracelet almost identical to the one Jamal wore. Surrounding the bracelet were symbols similar to those on the box, along with a passage written in a language none of them recognized. "This speaks of a sanctuary," she said, pointing to the passage. "A place where the bearer of the bracelet can learn to control their power. If we can find it, Jamal might be able to unlock his full potential and protect himself." "But how do we find it?" Jamal asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Dr. Monroe smiled faintly. "I believe the bracelet will guide you. It's not just a conduit, it's a map, in a way. The symbols on it may reveal the location of the sanctuary if you can learn to interpret them." The family left Dr. Monroe's office with a sense of purpose, though the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on their shoulders. That night, Jamal sat on his bed, studying the bracelet under the dim glow of his bedside lamp. He traced the symbols with his fingers, trying to make sense of them. As he focused, the glow intensified, and a series of faint images flashed in his mind: a dense forest, a mountain peak, and finally, a small temple carved into the rock. Jamal gasped, the vision fading as quickly as it had come. He grabbed a notebook and began sketching what he had seen, his hand moving frantically across the page. By the time he finished, he had a rough map, a path leading to the sanctuary. The next morning, he showed the map to his parents. Marcus examined it closely, nodding with approval. "This could be it," he said. "We'll need to plan carefully, but we'll get you there." The days that followed were a blur of preparation. Marcus researched the location, pinpointing a remote region in the mountains that matched Jamal's vision. Anita packed supplies, her movements quick and efficient despite the fear etched into her face. Even Mia pitched in, though she didn't fully understand the gravity of what was happening. Finally, the day came to set out on their journey. As they loaded the car, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the street for anything out of the ordinary, but saw nothing. Still, the unease lingered. The drive to the mountains was long and tense, the family speaking in hushed tones as they reviewed their plan. When they finally arrived, the air felt charged, as if the land itself was alive with energy. Jamal's bracelet glowed faintly, its warmth guiding them along a winding path into the forest. But as they neared the base of the mountain, a sound behind them made them freeze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoed through the trees. Marcus motioned for everyone to stop, his hand instinctively reaching for the hiking knife strapped to his belt. From the shadows, figures emerged, 3 of them, cloaked in dark clothing with their faces obscured. The leader stepped forward, their voice low and menacing. "The boy comes with us." Jamal's pulse quickened as the bracelet's glow intensified, spreading warmth through his arm. He clenched his fists, feeling the energy surge within him. For the first time, he realized he might have to fight not just to protect himself, but to ensure the power he carried didn't fall into the wrong hands. Jamal stood frozen as the leader of the cloaked figures repeated their demand, the tension crackling in the air like an approaching storm. "We don't want to hurt anyone," the figure said, their voice calm but firm. "But the boy has something that doesn't belong to him. Hand him over, and this will end peacefully." Marcus stepped in front of Jamal, his tall frame shielding his son. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me," he said, his voice low and steady. The leader tilted their head, almost amused. "A brave sentiment," they said. "But you have no idea what you're protecting. The bracelet is not his to keep. It holds power beyond your comprehension, and it's dangerous." Jamal clenched his fists, feeling the bracelet's warmth spread through his arm. "It's mine now," he said, his voice trembling but resolute, "and I'm not giving it to you." The leader stepped forward, their movements slow and deliberate. "You misunderstand, boy. The bracelet is a key. Without it, the seal will fail. And when that happens..." They trailed off, their words heavy with implication. "What seal?" Anita demanded, her voice sharp. "What are you talking about?" The leader hesitated, as if debating whether to reveal more. "The bracelet was created to lock away something ancient, something far more dangerous than you realize. If you don't return it to its rightful place, the consequences will be catastrophic." Jamal felt his chest tighten. He had assumed the bracelet was a tool, a source of power meant to help him, but now doubt began to creep in. If that's true, why didn't you come to us sooner? He asked. Why are you only here now? The leader's posture stiffened. Because the seal is weakening and time is running out. We were tasked with ensuring the key remains safe, but your meddling has complicated things. You've awakened its power, and now others are drawn to it. As if on cue, a low rumble echoed through the forest, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Jamal's heart raced as he looked around, trying to pinpoint the source. The sky darkened, shadows twisting unnaturally among the trees. What's happening? Mia whispered, clutching Anita's leg. The leader turned, their voice urgent. They found us. Before anyone could react, a deafening roar shattered the air. From the depths of the forest, a massive creature emerged, its body a grotesque amalgamation of shadow and flame, its eyes glowing with malevolent intensity. It moved with unnatural speed, its claws tearing through the underbrush as it charged toward them. Run, Marcus shouted, grabbing Jamal's arm and pulling him back. The cloaked figures moved into action, their hands glowing with strange, otherworldly energy as they tried to intercept the creature. Bolts of light shot from their palms, colliding with the beast and momentarily halting its advance. But the creature barely flinched, its roar growing louder as it swiped at them with deadly precision. Jamal stumbled as Marcus dragged him away, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The bracelet's glow intensified, sending waves of energy through his body. He could feel its power surging, begging to be unleashed. We can't just run, Jamal shouted. I can fight it. I know I can. No, Anita yelled, her voice panicked. You don't know what you're dealing with. But even as she spoke, Jamal's instincts took over. He pulled free from Marcus's grip, turning to face the creature. The bracelet pulsed in response, its glow expanding until his entire arm was engulfed in a shimmering aura. He raised his hand, and a surge of energy shot from the bracelet, striking the creature and sending it stumbling back. For a moment, everything was still. The creature let out a guttural growl, its eyes locking onto Jamal with newfound intensity. It lunged again, faster this time, and Jamal barely had time to react. Another burst of energy erupted from the bracelet, forming a protective barrier around him. The force of the impact sent him crashing to the ground, his vision blurring. The cloaked leader appeared at his side, their face now visible beneath the hood, a young woman with piercing blue eyes and a scar running down her cheek. You're stronger than I thought, she said, pulling him to his feet. But you're not ready for this. Jamal's head spun as he tried to process her words. What do I do? He asked, his voice cracking. The woman glanced at the creature, which was already recovering from the last attack. You need to reach the sanctuary, she said. It's the only place where the bracelet's full power can be controlled, but you can't do it alone. Before Jamal could respond, the woman raised her hand, sending a wave of energy that temporarily immobilized the creature. Go, she shouted. I'll hold it off as long as I can. Marcus grabbed Jamal's arm again, this time with no resistance. The family ran, the sounds of battle fading behind them as they followed the path outlined on the map. Jamal's mind raced, his thoughts a chaotic mix of fear, doubt, and determination. The sanctuary felt like their only hope, but he couldn't shake the feeling that reaching it was just the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, it was bigger than he had ever imagined, and time was running out. The mountain path was steep, the air growing colder and thinner with every step. Jamal's legs burned, but he pushed forward, his family close behind. The bracelet pulsed steadily, its glow brightening as they neared the sanctuary. Jamal didn't know how he knew they were close. He just felt it, like a magnetic pull guiding him. The sounds of the battle behind them had faded, but the memory of the creature's roar still echoed in his ears. Are we almost there? Maya asked, her small voice breaking the tense silence. Jamal nodded, though he wasn't sure how far they had left to go. I think so, just a little more. The forest opened into a clearing, and there it was, the sanctuary. Carved into the face of the mountain, the structure looked ancient but unyielding, its stone walls etched with symbols that matched the ones on Jamal's bracelet. A faint light emanated from the entrance, beckoning them forward. Marcus grabbed Jamal's shoulder, stopping him. "Wait, we don't know what's inside." "I don't think we have a choice," Jamal said. "The bracelet brought us here for a reason." Before anyone could argue, the ground trembled, and a deafening roar shattered the air. The creature was back, its massive form emerging from the tree line. Its body was battered and smoking from the earlier fight, but its eyes burned with unrelenting fury. Behind it, the cloaked woman stumbled into the clearing, blood staining her robes. She raised her hand, sending a bolt of energy toward the creature, but it shrugged off the attack like it was nothing. "Though," she shouted at Jamal, her voice hoarse, "get inside." Jamal hesitated for only a moment before running toward the sanctuary, his family close behind. The creature lunged, but the woman intercepted it, her energy flaring in one final, desperate attempt to hold it back. Jamal didn't look back as he crossed the threshold of the sanctuary, the air inside cool and still. The moment he stepped in, the bracelet's glow intensified, illuminating the chamber. Symbols on the walls lit up in response, casting intricate patterns of light across the stone. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and atop it was a circular indentation, the exact size and shape of the bracelet. "Jamal, what do we do now?" Anita asked, her voice trembling. I think I have to put it here," Jamal said, his gaze fixed on the pedestal. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked, his tone heavy with concern. "What if it's a trap?" Jamal swallowed hard. "I don't think it is. I think this is what the bracelet was made for." He stepped forward, his heart pounding as he raised his arm. The bracelet glowed brighter, almost blinding, as he placed it into the indentation. The room shook, and a beam of light shot up from the pedestal, piercing through the ceiling and into the sky. Jamal staggered back, shielding his eyes as the light filled the chamber. For a moment, everything was still. Then a voice, ancient and resonant, filled the air. "Bearer of the key, you have awakened the seal." Jamal turned, his breath catching as a figure emerged from the light. It wasn't the shadowy figure from his visions, but a being of pure energy, its form shifting and shimmering. Who are you?" Jamal asked. "I am the guardian of the seal," the being said. "The bracelet was entrusted to protect the balance. You have proven yourself worthy, but the danger is not over." "What danger?" Marcus asked, stepping protectively in front of his family. "The creature you faced is but a fragment of the greater threat," the guardian explained. "The seal was designed to contain a force of unimaginable destruction. It has grown restless, and the bracelet's removal weakened its prison. You must decide now. Will you restore the seal, or take on the burden of its power?" Jamal's mind raced. If I restore the seal, will the danger be gone forever? The guardian hesitated. No seal lasts forever, but it will buy the world time. If you take the power, you will have the strength to fight the threat directly, but the cost will be great. What cost? Anita demanded, her voice rising. The power will consume the bearer, the guardian said. It will take everything. Jamal's heart sank. He looked at his family, their faces etched with fear and love. He thought about the cloaked woman who had fought to protect him, the creature that had nearly destroyed them all, and the warning the stranger had given him in the woods. He didn't want to leave his family, but he couldn't let them live in a world under constant threat. "I'll take the power," Jamal said, his voice steady. "No," Anita cried, rushing to him. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Jamal said, tears streaming down his face. "I can't let this thing hurt anyone else. I have to do this." Marcus grabbed his shoulder. "Jamal, we'll find another way. Don't do this." But Jamal shook his head. "I love you, but this is my choice." The guardian raised its hand, and the bracelet rose from the pedestal, glowing brighter than ever. "The power is yours, Jamal. Use it wisely." The bracelet shot toward Jamal, merging with him in a blinding flash of light. He felt the energy surge through him, overwhelming, but also strangely comforting. The ground shook violently as the seal solidified, trapping the ancient force once more. The creature outside let out a final, furious roar before disintegrating into ash. When the light faded, Jamal stood in the center of the chamber, his body glowing faintly. He turned to his family, his heart breaking as he saw the tears in their eyes. "I'm okay," he said, his voice softer than before. "I'll always be with you." Before anyone could respond, the light consumed him completely, and he vanished, leaving the sanctuary silent once more. Outside, the sky cleared, the tension in the air lifting. Marcus held Anita as she sobbed, while Mia clung to her mother's leg. They didn't speak, but in their hearts, they knew Jamal had saved them, and the world. Far away, in a quiet corner of the forest, Jamal reappeared, his form no longer fully human. He was a being of light now, watching over the world from afar. The sacrifice had been great, but he was at peace, knowing he had done what was right. And though his family couldn't see him, he vowed to protect them for as long as he could. The forest was quiet, the air still, as Jamal stood in his new form, a being of light shimmering softly in the twilight. The warmth of the bracelet's power coursed through him, but it no longer felt foreign or overwhelming. It felt like a part of him. He could feel the world around him in ways he never had before, the subtle shift of the wind, the heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet, the quiet whispers of life in every corner of the forest. He was no longer just a boy, he was something more. But even in his newfound form, his thoughts were with his family. Jamal closed his eyes, focusing on the bond he shared with them. He could feel their grief, their love, and their pride. His heart ached, knowing he couldn't return to them as he once was, but he vowed to watch over them, to be their guardian from afar. He would protect not just them, but the world they lived in. It was the purpose he had been chosen for, the burden he had accepted. Back at the sanctuary, Anita, Marcus, and Mia lingered in the clearing, the weight of Jamal's absence heavy in the air. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm glow over the mountain. Marcus knelt beside the entrance, running his hand over the intricate carvings on the stone. "He's not gone," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the pain. "I can feel it. He's still with us." Anita wiped her tears, taking a deep breath as she looked at the glowing symbols on the sanctuary's walls. "He did what he had to do," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "He saved us all. And I know he wouldn't want us to fall apart." Mia, clutching her mother's hand, looked up at the sky. "Do you think he's watching us?" she asked softly. Anita knelt down, pulling Mia into a hug. "I know he is," she whispered. "He's our guardian now." Over the weeks that followed, life began to settle back into a new kind of normal. The family returned home, carrying with them the memory of what had happened and the strength Jamal had shown. The bracelet, the sanctuary, the creature. It all felt like a dream, but the scars and the lessons were real. Anita threw herself into her work, finding comfort in routine while keeping Jamal's memory alive in small ways. She planted a garden in their backyard, filling it with flowers and plants that reminded her of him. Marcus became more involved in their community, mentoring young kids and teaching them about bravery, kindness, and standing up for what's right, values he knew Jamal would want to pass on. Mia, though still young, carried her brother's courage with her. At school, she started standing up for classmates who were being picked on, her small but determined voice echoing her brother's strength. And every night, she would look out her window, searching the stars for a sign of Jamal. For Jamal, his existence as a being of light was both wondrous and bittersweet. He roamed the world, his senses attuned to its rhythms and its struggles. He intervened when he could, guiding lost travelers, calming storms, and nudging events toward peace. But his greatest joy came from watching over his family. He often lingered near their home, his presence felt in the rustling of the trees or the warm glow of a firefly that landed on Mia's windowsill. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, a faint glow appeared in the corner of the room. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it caught Anita's eye. She glanced at Marcus, who gave a small nod. "He's here," she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. Mia turned, her face lighting up with hope. "Jamal," she whispered. The glow flickered, and though there were no words, the family felt a warmth in their hearts, a presence that filled the room with love and reassurance. It was fleeting, lasting only a moment, but it was enough. They knew he was still with them, watching over them, guiding them. As the years passed, the story of Jamal and the bracelet became a quiet legend, shared in hushed tones among those who believed in the extraordinary. Dr. Monroe continued her research, documenting the sanctuary and the power it held, but she kept the details of Jamal's sacrifice a secret, honoring his family's wishes. For Jamal, the passage of time felt different. Days and years blended together as he continued his work, protecting the balance the bracelet had once sealed. But no matter how far he roamed, his heart remained tied to the family he had left behind. One day, many years later, as the sun set over the mountains, Jamal stood at the edge of a forest, watching the golden light filter through the trees. He felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the bond he shared with his family. Though their lives had moved on, their love for him had never faded. He closed his eyes, letting the connection fill him with peace. He had fulfilled his purpose, but he was more than just a guardian. He was a brother, a son, a protector. And as long as the world needed him, he would remain a silent force of light and hope, ensuring that no one else would bear the weight of the power he had embraced. And somewhere in the quiet of the evening, as the stars began to appear, a little girl looked up at the night sky and whispered, "Thank you, Jamal." The glow of a firefly flickered near her window, and she smiled, knowing her brother was there, always watching, always protecting.